PIR question C.29, grantees must report the total number of newly enrolled participants that received a behavioral, developmental, and sensory screening within the first 45 days of enrollment and after the program stopped collecting PIR information for the previous year. In Child Plus, there are 6 reasons a child may not count for C.29. Let's take a look at those now. Let's start with the setup and make sure that we have everything mapped correctly. Go to Setup, Module Setup, Health and Education Events. In order to satisfy the requirement, participants must have a behavioral, developmental, sensory auditory, and sensory visual screening. You can see each one listed here. You want to make sure to tell Child Plus which of your event types count as a completed screening for C.29. Here you can see that my behavioral event is connected to the behavioral screening for C.29. You'll want to repeat this process for the remaining screenings. Please keep in mind that these screening events should also be connected to your health and education requirements set. Now let's talk about adding the screenings to the participant's record. Each screening may be listed in the record, but it will only count if the status is set to fulfill the requirement. Remember, all 4 requirements must be met to count for this question. So if any one of these screenings has this symbol, that event will not count for C.29. You can see below that this icon will appear next to any event containing a status that will not count. System administrators can customize status by going to Setup, System Setup, Customize drop-down choices. Timing is everything. Screenings must be done between the date last year's PIR was reported and the child's 45th day of enrollment. Use the date screening started for this PIR year field to document the date you stopped collecting data for last year's PIR. Give it some thought because screenings that occurred prior to this date will not be included for C.29. Because you include the screenings in your health and education requirements, Child Plus can track the timing for you. Use Report 9714, Developmental Screenings for Newly Enrolled Children, to locate participants with screenings that occurred outside of the required time period. Looking at this report, you can see if a participant's screening occurred too early or too late. Question C.29 is for newly enrolled participants. Use the same report to identify participants that will not count because they're not newly enrolled, meaning they don't count for C.28. Let's rerun the report to include newly enrolled participants that do not count for C.29. I want to show you that this report can be used to identify participants who are missing one or more of the screenings. In the Event Missing column, participants will show a red X if they're missing one of the screenings. Calculation preferences may also be a reason that a participant does not count for C.29. A user at your agency may have set the calculation preferences to do not count for C.29. Avoid this accidental override by limiting access to this section. To monitor the use of calculation preferences, use Report 9801 PIR Calculation Settings Grid. Use this video as a guide for troubleshooting this complex PIR question. Like us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more helpful content.